let's talk about credible sources. So this is just a guideline to keeping track of if your source that you are trying to use is credible or not. Here are the 6 things that I want you to consider. There's going to be 2 other things that I note at the end of this slide, but the important part is to note that these 6 things are what you should be looking for. So first up, does the website have an author? So you need to make sure that it does have an author. Sometimes it might just say Britannica authors, or maybe it's just the history department at a university, or maybe it's labeled John Smith. If a website doesn't have an author, that usually means somebody's not willing to stake their name behind it. Include the other things that are on this list. Next up is date. So some articles, like this one right here, are going to have the date and time listed because they can tell you when it was last updated, when it was researched, and when it was even published. Other websites, like this one that I found on Edgar Allan Poe, is not published like a network website might be. This one is more of like, this is a website that contains information, and it's still up to date, as you can see from this 2020 guideline. I just say that try to make sure it's within the last 10 years so that we know that it's at least been updated or that somebody's checking in on this website to make sure that it is still the correct information. Next up is sources. What I mean by this is that people should be citing their sources. So this is an article where somebody actually wrote the article and then after the fact, they cited where they got their information from. Another place might be like this one, where in the middle of it, they actually just included links to where they got their sources from, and then down at the bottom, like this, they have a works cited. Both of these are fine, but you just need to make sure that it's not just somebody claiming that the information is theirs. They have a place where they found that information themselves. Next up is domain. This one I'm a little bit more lenient on because if you do the old Google search engine where you type in site:.edu and then you're just specifically looking for edu websites, that doesn't always mean it's going to be the best website. Somebody can create a domain that says edu and that doesn't necessarily mean it's credible. All I'm asking you guys is to use your best judgment and make sure that the site contains the other pieces in this document as well. Next up is web design. So I have 2 different designs of websites right here. This one is a poor example because it has different fonts, different colors. The pictures are overlaying. It's just very poorly put together. This would not be an example of a credible website because there's no spot check or anybody making sure that this is going to be a good place to find information. Right here, I didn't get the whole website, but even off the bat, you can tell that the information is clear, it states who it's written by, and then we dive into the article. So you want to look at color, font, size, pictures, etc. Next up is writing design. If you open and you read an article and you are instantly able to find a spelling or grammar error, then you need to move on. The reason is any article that has been published and from a reputable website, it's going to be edited by other people, meaning that there are spot checks to avoid grammar or spelling mistakes. So if you find a grammar or spelling mistake, move on. So this is not something I'm going to ask you guys to base it off of, but I just want to talk about bias. I am all for you reading different sides of the spectrum, but I just want to note that while the facts might be correct from a website you're reading, that does not necessarily mean that you should only read that article. What I'm saying is, so 2 sides of the argument might provide the same facts, but their spin on it is going to be specific to the agenda that they're trying to push. So here's just a chart. You can actually Google this if you want to see it up close, but who's going to be more neutral, who's going to be more towards the left, and who's going to be more towards the right. So those are just things to note, especially when it comes to finding information about political agendas out there. So this one is always the toughest one for me when I talk about Wikipedia. I am more than happy for you to go onto Wikipedia to find information just to start. However, you should never use this as your primary source, meaning you need to make sure that a fact or a piece of information that you found on Wikipedia that you want to use can be found somewhere else. and then you will use that source as your information. I love Wikipedia. However, anybody can edit it. As one of my grad school projects, I had to edit a Wikipedia page to see how long it would take for them to take it down. It took them 2.5 weeks to find that the information was incorrect. So what I'm saying is, please just make sure that you are finding the information elsewhere and you're not using Wikipedia as a primary source. As for your assignment that you are going to do is I'm going to ask you to find a credible article on any topic that you want. It must meet 5 of the 6 requirements, and I'll go back to that slide here in a second. Read the article, summarize the article, include it in text citation, cite the article in your works cited, make sure the paper is in MLA format based on what we went over earlier this week. Please let me know if you have any questions, and that's it.